It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And we're the Insiders. So, Scott, the Republican budget is out now. Who are the winners and who are the losers?
Well, I think you clearly would say that the taxpayers are winners. In this budget, you have a huge income tax cut for people across the state of Wisconsin. You also have some good long-term budgeting decisions, more money in the rainy day fund, not the huge increases that the governor was seeking of almost 20% in state spending over a 2-year period of time. It's a much more reasonable thing that fits in with the taxpayers' ability to pay. So I think overall, the taxpayers of Wisconsin are winners here. Local governments were clearly winners, right? I mean, local governments and public schools both got billion-dollar increases in additional revenues from the state of Wisconsin. So I think those folks are definitely winners in this as well.
Let me start out with some of the disagreements I have with Scott. The taxpayers of Wisconsin did not win. The middle class, the average person, just lost big. Republicans decided to increase property taxes by $650 million at a time when there was a $7 billion surplus in order to fund public schools. Oh, and by the way, public schools did not do well. While they got a $300 and some increase per pupil, the voucher schools got $1,100 on the low end and almost $3,000, or was it more than $3,000 per pupil in high school? Oh my goodness, no, the taxpayers lost, public education lost. Who won? Rich people. They got a big reduction in their taxes. And by the way, why did the Republicans with a $7 billion surplus increase property taxes by $650 million? Because they know that's paid by the average guy. They are beholden to the rich. So you know who the biggest winner in this whole thing was? A dying Republican ideology, which will be wiped off the face of the map after the next election. There is going to be a Democratic state Senate. And with this budget, there's a good chance that there will be a Democratic assembly. No amount of trying to spin this is going to take away from the fact that the little guy got stuck. His schools, especially in rural areas where Republicans represent, got stuck, and we gave the money away to private voucher schools. This is not going to play well, folks. And by the way, talk about somebody who was a winner and a loser. That was Milwaukee. They needed this. It was existential for them to get this. On the other hand, they had, oh, by the way, you know what's the biggest winner here? The death of local control. Republicans have now made it clear. Not only is it dead, not only has there been a funeral, and not only has local control been buried, but it will never resurrect again, because Republicans, who are always the bastion of local control, have wiped it away with attaching all sorts of requirements with regard to the city of Milwaukee if they want to go ahead and take this money. It's an outrage.
Well, proving the adage that no good deed goes unpunished. The Republicans have just given the largest increase in aids to local governments in state history, the largest increase in aids to public schools in state history. They did it on a bipartisan basis with the governor. And now it's going to be this partisan rhetoric about how the Republicans are raising property taxes. The Republicans are doing this. My goodness gracious. No wonder it's difficult to cut a deal at the state capitol. Tony Evers ran around the state doing press conferences about how great this deal was. And now already one Democratic spokesman is claiming that this is a terrible, terrible package by the Republicans. I will agree with you on one thing, Chuck, and that is that Milwaukee was both a winner and a loser. They got a lot more money. Unfortunately, they're going to get it in many ways by taking it from working class taxpayers in their communities by raising the sales tax. That's a very regressive tax, you would admit, as a progressive. You're going to ask the poorest people in the city to pay for the bad decisions that politicians in Milwaukee made over a 3-4 decade period of time. But I guess that's where we are. They're so far down. They even have to ask the poorest people in that city to pay more in order to bail out the city and county of Milwaukee, in addition to people from all over the state trying to bail them out. What is You talked about the Republican ideology and all sorts about the stuff. They're supposed to be losers here. I would say that Milwaukee made huge strides in trying to reach out to Republican leaders and try to get agreement on things. And I was quite impressed that we had this bipartisan cooperation. And then 2 hours after the governor signs the deal, with these guys standing right behind him, they sue to try to get all of the requirements that would force fiscal restraint onto the city and onto the county taken out of the deal. They just wanted more cash. That's going to be hard for them now to come back to the Capitol in the future and say, gee, we'd like to earnestly work with you again for several months on a deal. And then 2 hours after we've got a deal with you, we'll turn around and sue you to get rid of half of it. So I don't, I saw moments where I thought I saw bipartisan progress here, and we did get bipartisan deals, but Milwaukee is clearly a bad actor in the time since that deal was signed.
You know what? I feel bad today because unfortunately, Scott is starting to sound a little bit too much like Robert Voss. There is so little reality in that last statement. It's the no good deed goes unpunished, is right, Scott? And it was Milwaukee reaching out to the Republicans. Hey, we're facing an existential crisis here. Would you provide the funding so that we can deal with our pension issue and move forward? What did the Republicans do? They said, we can figure out a way to do that by putting in a very regressive tax that you'll have to vote for. But then we're going to put on all sorts of restrictions that will make it almost
Milwaukee
impossible
suggested the sales tax, not
for
the
you to be
Republicans.
viable. That's because they had to come up with something that the Republicans would accept. By the way, here's the bottom line. In 2024, that's why politics is so interesting. It's always about the next election. And in 2024, there are only going to be Republican and Democratic legislators on the ballot for the Assembly and the Senate. And Republicans are going to reap the harvest. And I think for a change, a bad deed will actually go punished in this political season, because they made sure that the very people who shouldn't pay, the little guy who owns a home, and that's all that's left after this last budget cycle, where we're going to take every business tax we can off of the property tax, no M&E tax, no personal property tax. Now that we've got it down to just homeowners, let's put $650 million on them when we have a $7 billion surplus. And then let's go steal that money and do a $3 billion tax cut targeted at the rich. Oh, this will not go unheralded. This will not go unnoticed, and it will not miss it on the 30-second ads, which are going to appear next year. So I feel really bad for the people of Wisconsin right now, but you know what? Your votes will win it back for people in 2 years, and I'm looking forward to that.
You'll recall, Chuck, that you and I both ran for the legislature, and you get elected by the people in your district, not by the people in another part of the state. The people in the Republican districts did very well in this budget, and they will vote to reelect their members as a result.
And there will be some new districts, and so that's what's going to hurt the Republicans. And apparently they did not take that into account when they made this vote.
We'll see.
See you next time.
You've been listening to The Insider with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.